My name is Koa Kalua, 30 years old from Hilo, Hawaii. I thought I was inheriting a shipping business. What I got was a crime scene, sealed in concrete, soaked in blood, and buried in silence. My father didn't disappear. He was erased. And now it's my turn to uncover everything they tried to hide, stay to the end, because some legacies are built on lies. This is my family betrayal and revenge story. I hadn't heard the name Koa Kalua in over a decade when the call came in. I almost let it go to voicemail, unknown 808 number. Probably spam. Probably someone trying to sell me a timeshare back home, but something made me answer. Is this Koa Kalua? A woman's voice asked. Soft. Polite. But measured. Who's asking? I replied, my name's Leilani. I'm your cousin. My grip tightened on the phone. Leilani. Makoa's daughter. She hesitated. Yeah. I'm sorry to call out of the blue, but Uncle Makoa passed away. Heart failure. Last night. The words hit like a low tide rising in my chest. Not grief, confusion. The man had been the iron spine of our family, a force of nature with a temper like lava and a smile that never reached his eyes, and now he was just gone. I'm sorry, I said, though I didn't mean it. Why are you calling me? He left a will, she said. And he named you as the successor. You inherit everything. I sat down, everything. I repeated, the company. The land. The warehouse. Even the house in Keaukaha. A pause. He wanted it all to go to you. I hadn't been back to Hilo since I was 20. Not since the summer Dad disappeared and Makoa told me to stop asking questions. Told me to leave it alone if I valued peace. I hadn't spoken to anyone in the family since. I moved to San Diego. Built a quiet, safe life. Left the island, and all its ghosts, behind me, so why now? Why not you? I asked. You're his daughter. He didn't think I was capable, she said. Or maybe he knew you'd come back for answers. That hung in the air like a dare. My mind flashed to the last time I saw Uncle Makoa, standing on the porch in Hilo, sun casting long shadows over his face, telling me in that deep, calm voice of his, your father made a mess. Best thing you can do is forget it. But I never did, I just locked it up and threw myself into life on the mainland. Worked in logistics, ironically, the same industry he ruled back home, and now that same business was mine. A chill ran through me. What aren't you telling me, Leilani? I asked. Another pause. Then, just come home. Read the papers. See what he left behind. You'll understand. I ended the call with a flight already pulled up on my laptop, one way. San Diego to Hilo, 12 years is a long time to run. But the past had a way of catching up, especially on an island, and something told me this wasn't just about inheritance, it was about secrets, and revenge. The air smelled the same, salt, diesel, and rain-soaked concrete, the strange perfume of the Kalua logistics yard. A mix of ocean and machinery. I stood just outside the rusted front gate, staring through the chain-link fence like I was a kid again. But this time, there was no one yelling for me to come inside. No one barking orders over walkie-talkies or slapping truck beds with calloused hands, just silence. The warehouse hadn't changed. Same sun-warped metal siding. Same faded company sign, local roots, island strong. The office lights were off. Grass had started to crack through the asphalt. Everything looked frozen in time, like it had been waiting for me to come back. I walked in through the side entrance. Inside, the air was thick. Humid. Still. Row after row of shelves stacked with crates, some labeled, some not. Wooden pallets, wrapped tarps, old forklifts long dead. It was like stepping into the belly of something that used to breathe, and somewhere, buried deep in the gut of this place, were the answers I came for. I ran my hand along a crate marked 2012, Hamakua, and felt the dust cling to my skin. That was the year Dad disappeared. He worked here. Ran this place, even more than Makoa, at least when I was a kid. Everyone respected him. Some feared him. But when he vanished, nobody asked questions. Nobody filed a report. Nobody held a funeral, just silence, and Makoa, standing on our front porch with his heavy hands on my shoulders. Saying, "Your father got in too deep. Let this lie, Koa. The business has to survive." I buried it for years. Buried the memories of nights he came home bloodied, smelling like seawater and sweat. The mornings he'd argue with Makoa behind closed doors. And that one terrifying night, I was 18, when he looked me dead in the eye and said, "If anything happens to me, don't trust Makoa." I never told anyone that, not until now, when I was alone in the very building where he vanished, walking among the containers and shadows like they were still watching me. I found his old locker near the break room, #07. I remember because he always joked about it being his lucky number. The lock had been broken off. Inside were only two things, a rusted wrench and a torn photo of us fishing off Coconut Island, taped to the back wall. He looked happy in that photo. I didn't. I pocketed the picture and stepped back out into the sunlight, eyes scanning the yard. A delivery truck from Lehua Island Freight pulled up along the edge of the fence, engine rumbling. The driver glanced at me, held my gaze too long, and then pulled away. Something was off. I could feel it in my bones. This wasn't a business, it was a graveyard, and it was still very much alive. It started with a drawer that didn't sit right. I was in the office, Makoa's old office, technically mine now, sifting through decades of dusty ledgers and coffee-stained invoices. Most of it was mundane, shipment records, payroll logs, truck maintenance reports. All paper, all faded. But something about the bottom desk drawer stuck out. Literally, it didn't close all the way. I yanked it open and found an envelope jammed into the back corner. Inside was a single key, small, rusted, brass. No tag, no markings. Just wrapped in a scrap of paper with 3 words written in shaky pen. "When the past wakes," I held it for a long time, heart thudding. Then I looked at the file cabinet in the corner. It was old, older than me, maybe even older than the office itself. A hulking metal beast with thick drawers and a reinforced lock that had resisted bolt cutters, according to Leilani. No one had been able to open it since Makoa sealed it up years ago, but the key in my hand slid in smooth as a whisper. The click echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room. I opened the top drawer. Inside were red folders, neatly stacked. Each one labeled by year, 2007, 2008, 2009. The tab stopped at 2012, the year Dad vanished. Beneath them sat a black notebook bound in leather and a cheap digital camera. Long out of battery, I opened the 2012 folder first. What I saw stopped my breath. Shipping manifests, all falsified. Crates logged as agricultural equipment or replacement parts, but routed to off-record locations. Names I didn't recognize: Nakoa Holdings, Hilo Star Partners, Ocean View Investors, all clearly shell companies. Then came the photos, blurry surveillance shots. Nighttime. Flashlight beams. Men loading cargo into containers, but the cargo wasn't freight, it was people. Some had faces blurred by motion, others partially turned away, but one man was unmistakable. Broad shoulders. Worn jeans. Red Aloha freight cap. Dad. My hands trembled as I flipped through the images. The last one showed him standing at the edge of the dock, shouting at someone, his finger pointed, jaw open. Next to him stood Makoa, arms folded, face unreadable. The next page was a printed email, no subject line, just one line of text: "He knows. If he talks, we're done." And the sender, Lehua.ops at mail, the same company that sent that truck the other day. A chill rolled down my spine. This wasn't just smuggling. This was organized, layered, deliberate. A business built not on goods, but on secrets, and Dad had found out. The notebook held more, notes in shorthand, names, dates, cash amounts. Code words like Luakini and Kukai Moana scribbled beside initials. It was overwhelming, like staring into a storm that had already happened but still echoed in the air. I closed the drawer slowly. My father hadn't disappeared, he'd been erased, and now, with Makoa dead, I was next in line, but not to inherit, to be silenced. I didn't want to open the red folder. It sat beneath the other files like a rotten tooth hidden in a perfect smile, worn at the edges. Its label hand-scrawled in thick black ink, Hilo. In Hawaiian, it means to depart, or to abandon. The moment I touched it, the room felt colder. Inside were only a few documents. Sparse. Selective. Like someone had carefully chosen what should survive if everything else burned. The top sheet was a manifest, dated July 8, 2012. The night my father vanished, according to the file, a 40-foot container was loaded after midnight at Dock 4, marked for shipment to Kaukia Holdings, private route. The cargo listed, HV equipment, secured. Non-regulated. But tucked behind it, stapled like an afterthought, was a grainy photo. 2 men. 1 container. 1 flashlight beam cutting through darkness, and there was my father again, Kaleo Kalua, fists clenched, jaw tight, standing in front of the open container. But this time, the other man's face wasn't blurred, it was Makoa, wearing that same smug, composed expression he always had when he knew he held the upper hand. 1 hand on the crate. The other on my father's shoulder. I flipped the photo over. On the back, scrawled in red pen, he changed his mind. Too late. The next page was a ledger, 4 months of coded payments, all routed through Lehua Island Freight. Each line item was tagged HH or KM. At first I thought it was gibberish, until I remembered Makoa's middle name, Kawika. And my dad's was Hikili. The code wasn't for locations. It was initials. Makoa had been paying people off. Moving money. Covering tracks. The company wasn't just doing illegal shipping. It was a laundering operation. And it wasn't just parts or untaxed liquor or even drugs, it was people. I saw more photos, some surveillance, others clearly taken by someone close to the operation. Men in uniforms pushing covered stretchers into cargo containers. Women with blank stares stepping off unmarked trucks in the dead of night. And all of it. Catalogued. Labeled. Filed like it was inventory. What kind of monster turns people into shipping codes? The folder ended with one last note. A printed text thread, short. No sender attached, just 2 lines, he's getting paranoid. If he leaves, we both fall. I sat there for a long time, trying to breathe through the rage burning in my chest. Dad tried to leave. He tried to shut it down. To blow the whistle, and they killed him for it. This wasn't some legacy I had inherited, it was a crime scene. Kalua Logistics was never about community. It was never about the island. It was a cover, a pipeline, a lie my uncle buried beneath every smiling handshake and sponsorship banner, but now I had the truth, and I wasn't going to bury it. I found Leilani at the Pure Cafe just after sunrise. She sat at her usual table near the window, sipping from a chipped white mug, her eyes fixed on the horizon like she was waiting for the ocean to confess something. She didn't look surprised when I slid into the seat across from her. Thought you'd show up, she said, voice quiet. I didn't waste time. You knew, I said. About Dad. About what Makoa was doing. You knew all along. Her lips tightened. Not everything. That's not a denial. She set the cup down. But didn't look at me. When you left. You got out. I didn't. I had to stay, had to survive here. And surviving meant pretending I didn't see things I couldn't explain. You mean things you didn't want to explain? She flinched at that. Good, Uncle Makoa had people everywhere. Koa, she whispered. Cops. Port officials. Warehouse hands. Anyone who got too curious either got a bonus or went missing. I was 18. He paid my tuition, my rent. You think I wanted to ask questions? He murdered my father. Her eyes met mine then. Shiny. Unblinking, I know. The silence between us turned to stone. Heavy. Cold. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, barely holding my voice steady. Why wait until now? I didn't know how deep it went. Not until you came back and started digging. She glanced over her shoulder, voice lowering. You're waking things up, Koa. People who were content to forget are suddenly nervous. You think this place is just a sleepy port town, but it's not. Not when money and silence have been feeding each other for years. I'm not going to stop. I didn't expect you to, she said. But if you're going to take this further, you need to know what you're walking into. The Hilo folder. That's just one part. There's more. Much more. Where? She hesitated. Then slid a napkin across the table. On it, she'd written an address, a warehouse in Panewa, tucked behind an old auto shop. What's there? I asked. Records. Old ones. Dad made backups, paranoid about the wrong people getting the originals. I saw him drop off a box the week after your dad vanished. You're telling me this now because I'm tired of being afraid, she said. And because if anyone can finish this, really expose what he did, it's you. I stood slowly, heart pounding. If I go in there and find what I think I will, there's no turning back. She nodded. There never was. As I walked out, the wind shifted, bringing the scent of rain and diesel from the harbor. Leilani stayed at the table, staring at the sea, and I knew then, we weren't just tied by blood anymore, we were tied by truth, and truth was the one thing this family had always feared. The warehouse was exactly how Leilani described it, tucked behind a rusted auto yard, surrounded by weeds and silence. I pried the back door open with a crowbar and slipped inside. The air was thick with mildew and motor oil, the floor littered with dust-covered crates and old filing cabinets, near the far wall. I found a metal storage locker with a broken padlock and a stack of warped cardboard boxes inside. Most were filled with tax forms, outdated logs, and faded blueprints of the port yard. I almost gave up, until I saw it, a black plastic case, duct tape across the front, one label, written in block letters with a red Sharpie. He knew too much. My throat dried. It was a VHS tape. I hadn't seen one in years, but I knew what I was looking at wasn't junk. It was a relic. A buried warning. I took it back to the office at Kailua Logistics. There was still an old TV in the break room. I wasn't even sure it worked, but when I slid the tape into the deck, the machine whirred to life like it had been holding its breath for a decade. The screen flickered. Static. Then, a grainy security feed, date stamp, July 8, 2012. 11:47 p.m., I recognized the office immediately. Same worn-down desk. Same blinds rustling in the night wind. The camera angle was slightly tilted, but the view was clear enough. My dad was there, Kaleo Kalua. Tall, broad-shouldered, pacing the room like a storm ready to break. Papers in hand. Anger in every step. Then the door opened. Makoa walked in, calm, composed, a shadow of a man who already knew the outcome. The footage had no audio, but the tension in the room bled through the screen. My father slammed a file on the desk, jabbing his finger at Makoa. Makoa didn't flinch, just stepped closer, arms crossed, saying something short, final. Dad shook his head violently. He reached for the door. Makoa stepped in front of it. They argued more. Dad shoved him back. Then, Makoa pulled a pistol from behind his back. I shot to my feet. The screen showed my father's hands up, his mouth moving fast. Makoa raised the weapon, calm, robotic. There was no struggle. Then, two flashes, 1, 2, my father collapsed. Makoa stood over him, unmoving. He leaned down, picked something up, probably the folder, and left the room like nothing happened. The screen froze. Then turned to static. I stood there shaking, the silence around me now deafening. I hadn't just imagined it. I hadn't been paranoid all these years. He killed my father, cold. Calculated. Covered it up like a piece of misfiled paperwork, and he walked free. For years, but not anymore. I ejected the tape, tucked it under my jacket, and stepped out into the rain. Now I had everything I needed. The truth wasn't hidden anymore, it was in my hands. The trick was to smile, shake hands. Nodding at the right people. Wear the old company polo, drive Makoas lifted Tacoma, and pretend like I was just another Kalua stepping into the family legacy. No one asked questions, no one even blinked. They saw the name, and that was enough. Business is business, one of the port managers told me. Glad to see a Kalua running things again. I nodded, played the part. I toured the docks, checked the warehouses, answered emails from old partners. I signed delivery forms and told the drivers we were re-evaluating internal systems. Just like Makoa used to say when he was cleaning up after a scare, but behind the scenes, I was tearing it all apart. I installed cameras. Dug into the digital archives. Hacked into the old shipping software with help from a friend on the mainland. And what I found was bigger than I imagined. Dozens of shell companies, names that meant nothing, Nalu Corp, Red Reef Solutions, Kai Logistics, but all traced back to the same P.O. box. All filtered through Lehua Island Freight. And all signed off by K.M. Makoa. He hadn't just been running a shady operation. He'd been orchestrating an entire network, laundering money, falsifying documents, moving people through shipping containers under false manifests. And the worst part, it was still happening. The operations had slowed after his death, sure. But they hadn't stopped. Someone else had picked up where he left off. The names on the manifests had changed, but the patterns hadn't. Every few nights, I'd see trucks arrive well past midnight, unmarked, silent, careful. I logged every plate, every timestamp. Leilani helped when she could, quietly, from the payroll system, slipping me records, copying expense trails that led to anonymous payments made in cash. We found bribes to harbor patrol. Payouts to police accounts labeled consulting fees. I started storing the evidence in an encrypted cloud folder. Every receipt. Every video. Every file from that damn red folder and the VHS tape. I even copied Makoa's old planner. He'd scribbled notes like a war general, HH equals risk. Kaleo too curious. No leaks. Too late, uncle, I kept smiling. Kept playing the part. I went to community events. Donated to a local school in Makoa's name. People clapped. Patted my back. They had no idea. The truth wasn't just hiding in the shadows, it was dancing in the light, right in front of them, and I was letting it, because when it finally came crashing down, when the arrest started. And the headlines screamed, I wanted them to remember the name, not Makoa, mine, Koa Kalua, the son they tried to silence, the heir who burned their empire to the ground. It ended on a Thursday, but really, it had started years ago, with a whisper, a vanished father, and a lie the size of this island. I drove to the federal building in downtown Hilo just after sunrise, the USB drive burning a hole in my pocket. Months of surveillance footage, bank transfers, falsified manifests, and one VHS tape converted to digital, evidence that could collapse the whole rotten structure my uncle built. The agent was younger than I expected. Mainland, maybe late 30s, sharp eyes. Name tag read Agent Sandoval. This all legit? He asked, turning the drive over in his hand. I grew up in it, I said. You tell me. I didn't stay long. I didn't have to. Once they plugged in that drive, it was only a matter of time. By nightfall, the raid was already underway. I watched from a hill above the harbor, headlights flashing below like an angry constellation, unmarked SUVs. Black tactical vans. Armed agents fanned across the yard like a wave crashing down. They moved in silence, smooth and coordinated. I saw flashlights cut across the warehouse floor, hands pressed to heads, men kneeling on gravel, 3 arrests, 2 drivers. 1 supervisor. All part of the smuggling chain. I recognized every face, so did the FBI, what shook me most wasn't the arrests, but what they found in the back of one sealed container, a hidden room. A cot. Chains. A padlocked door on the inside. Someone had been there. Recently, they weren't just moving people, they were keeping them. I felt sick, but the worst came the next morning. Leilani was gone, no text. No call. Her apartment, cleaned out. Her car, abandoned by Coconut Island. She'd vanished without a word, like my father once did, but I knew Leilani. She wouldn't run. Not after everything we uncovered together. Either someone warned her, or someone silenced her. I handed her name to Agent Sandoval that same day. He promised to issue a trace, but deep down, I feared I'd never see her again. The news broke by noon. Kahlua Logistics under federal investigation. Hilo shipping empire tied to human trafficking ring. Legacy of Makoa Kahlua crumbles. Neighbors stopped saying aloha. Stores pulled sponsorship banners. Kids walked by the office with their heads down. The Kahlua name had once meant strength. Roots. Loyalty, now it was a punchline. A warning. I didn't care, let it rot. I drove to the dock that evening. Alone, watched the tide come in over the rocks where my father used to fish. Where I used to believe the world made sense, I took the last folder, the one Makoa had kept closest, and threw it into the sea. Some truths needed to be burned, others needed to drown, but the rest, they needed to be heard. They found him near Kamina Caves. A hiker had reported a strange smell drifting from a lava tube hidden by undergrowth. The police kept it quiet, but Agent Sandoval called me as soon as forensics confirmed the DNA, Kaleo Kahlua. My father, missing for 12 years. Buried in darkness not more than an hour from home. He hadn't vanished at sea like they used to whisper. He hadn't run off, he'd been murdered and dumped like trash, hidden by the very family that claimed to protect me. The autopsy was short, 2 gunshot wounds to the chest. No signs of struggle. His watch still on his wrist. His wedding ring still on his finger. They left him whole. But they buried him silent. The funeral was small, just a pastor, some of the old-timers who remembered Dad from the docks, and me. No flowers. No glossy program. Just a single photo, him holding me at the shore, grinning like he knew something the world didn't. I scattered his ashes in the ocean off Coconut Island, the same spot where we used to fish in the early mornings. The water shimmered in the sun, and for a moment, I could almost hear his voice again, cast steady. No panic. The fish'll come if you're patient. With the case closed and the company assets seized, I was left with one thing no one could take, the land. Kahlua Logistics had owned several lots scattered around Hilo, warehouses, storage yards, old concrete slabs where new construction was supposed to rise but never did. Blood money paid for most of it. I sold every inch. Except for one, the last untouched piece of soil behind the main office. The land where my father planted ti leaves before every storm. Where my mother used to hang laundry in the wind. That patch was sacred, so I rebuilt, not an empire. Not a company, a place called Kaleo Center, named for him, a refuge for displaced workers, trafficking survivors, and kids who didn't have safe homes. We offered housing. Training. A place to breathe again. A place to speak. I built it with the same hands Makoa tried to use to silence me, and I spoke his name, my father's name. Every time someone asked me why, they say the past is something you bury, but I learned that the past has roots, and when you water it with truth, it doesn't stay dead, it grows. The Kahlua name doesn't mean empire anymore, it means justice, it means healing, it means beginning again. Like if you believe truth always finds the light, subscribe for more gripping tales of betrayal, justice, and redemption. Share this video with someone who believes that silence can be broken, and healing is possible. What would you do if your family buried the truth? Tell us in the comments. Your story matters too.